everybody. Welcome back to Red Hot Marriage. We are so excited today that we have our friend, Katherine, that is a counselor in the Houston area. And she is going to be today unpacking some of the things that on communication, on just improving your relationship. And you are just going to love her. So, Katherine, we're going to let you just talk a little bit about how you came into this field, maybe who you are, and what you're passionate about. So,
Yeah,
let's begin.
sure. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited about this. So, I'm Katherine, like you said, from the Houston area. I've been in the world of therapy probably about 10 years now, almost 10 years. Prior to being a therapist, I was a mental health coach that worked one on one with partners and relationships that were overcoming infidelity. Somehow that turned into a big dream of opening my own practice and becoming a licensed practitioner. A big part of the reason why I got into this was from my own journey with my own husband. And so now it's been my delight to work with couples to anything from the communication issues all the way across that board to if they're overcoming any trust issues, rebuilding intimacy, and things like that.
I love that. I love it. So, how long have you been a therapist?
So that would be 4.5 years already, 3.5
Oh,
years
wow.
private practice.
Wow. Wow. And what is like I guess the area that you're most passionate to work with?
That would be couples, which all my colleagues laugh at me because they're like, "How do you do two brains at one time?"
For real.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to merge the dynamic of intimacy, which is taking two people and really converging them into one. So couples is
I
my
love
jam.
that is
That's
awesome.
fantastic. Like one of the things that we say all the time in Red Hot Marriage is that having a red hot marriage is not a destination, but is a journey. A journey that can take you so many different ways.
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure that in your practice you've seen couples navigate, I mean, hardship for sure.
Mhm.
Things that are very difficult to traverse and stepping on landmines, all the things that happen in a relationship.
Sure.
What are like whenever you look back, what are some of these unique things that you see over and over that that we can help someone with as we go along and kind of setting it up for the time that we're going to be with you?
Yeah. So, what I would say is something I've noticed over and over in relational dynamics is that everybody has this theory that opposites attract. I'm going to go polar opposite on this, guys, and say that I think it's our insecurities that attract.
Ah.
And here's why.
Oh
Here's
wow,
here's the biggest
wow.
example I give couples all the time when they come in and they're like, "Hey, we don't know how we're to communicate," those types of things. I always start with our differences because I think it's important to know ourselves as individuals before we're colliding together in that corporate feel, if you will. So one of the things I always use, I said, well, I know in my own marriage and many people that I've helped, sometimes females will come in or a wife will come in and they'll say, well, in the beginning, he didn't talk a whole lot. And I really appreciated that. It was easy. It was calming to me. 5 months, 5 years later, they're going to say, he never says anything to me. I never get him to talk. And then I have to be the therapist in the room that says, well, actually, he never really lied about who he was. But we didn't know how to communicate those differences. So I think the
Mhm.
routine thing is couples don't know how to transition in relationship, depending on how you get started, how intimacy develops itself. Did you have a long courtship? Did you not? Did you have kids really fast? Waited to have them? But all of those things really shift the dynamic of a relationship. So I think commonly it would be easy to say with couples, we get lost in the transition instead of
Mm,
developing in that transition.
right.
Ooh, that's good. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever thought of that.
No, then it's our differences,
Yeah.
right? Are
Yeah,
that attracts.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a need within one another that we actually find. I think that's why it's stronger to say our insecurities are coming together to be healed, to be made
Yeah.
confident again versus saying we're opposite and those types of things, which could lead you in a completely different opposite direction of the narrative of your relationship if you're not careful.
Yeah. I really love this because I mean we're talking to you, Catherine. This is nothing that maybe you pulled from a book or podcast that you heard yesterday, but it's something that you've seen in your practice with actual couples that are navigating change, are in the middle of all this uh,
Yeah.
very difficult, interesting season, and for you to pinpoint that for me is it brings awareness because I've never thought about that. And I hope that couples that are listening to this right now, that pay attention to this, because maybe this will light one of those light bulbs
Sure.
that cause you to really know and become aware of where you're at right now,
Yeah.
and even how to navigate across what you're facing.
Yeah.
I know I had seen a post that you had done a while ago, and it was talking about that communication was not the problem, safety was. And that just like stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I want for you to just unpack this one because that is so good.
Sure, sure. So I think when someone brings up my communication piece, again, I'm notorious for saying I don't think it's communication, I think it's dialoguing, right? It's the inability to go back and forth. And I think when safety gets involved, or I'm assuming a couple doesn't really understand a safety in the relationship, one of the first things I'm always going to ask them to ask themselves is, when was the last time you were truly honest with your partner, no matter what the topic was? And if the answer is no to that, then that's where we start digging into it, because you're only safe if you can be authentic. But if you have to hide parts of yourself, then you're not authentic. And to not be fully known is not to experience being fully loved when we are fully present with our partner. Mm-hmm.
That is so,
Mm-hmm.
it's so
Man,
true.
that is so. That is,
I know.
yeah.
I know. When I read it, I showed it to
Yeah.
Eric right away. I'm like, look at this.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
awesome what Catherine just
Wow.
shared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful how simplistic it really is, right? Most
Hmm.
people think that if I'm in this place, my relationship is over. There's this hopelessness. And so I see couples a lot. The spectrum is so wide, from we got married too young, we had kids too fast, we didn't really know what we were doing. And none of that, I would say honestly, at least 80% of the time, is not true for my couples. What it is we never were introduced to each other properly. So a lot of times when you get into this conflict that can't seem to reduce itself in communication, it's all because the safety is lacking. And honestly, guys, what safety is honesty, right? Because we all have a desire that if this is my person, then my person should know everything about me. So it's not, couples always get fixated on the idea that they can't. My job with my couples is to get into the middle of, when did it stop, or did it ever develop? And
Yeah.
either one of those
Mm.
is going to lead to that transformation.
I know I've heard you say before that people will edit themselves
Mm-hmm.
in real time. What does that mean?
So this
Yeah.
is my favorite thing to talk about, because the strangest thing I say as a couples therapist to anyone I'm working with is, I do not believe in compromise. And here's why. Now let me put an edit to that and say, I do understand there's times to be flexible, there's times to pick your battles, right? But compromising is where, again, I'm not showing up as my full self. So most of the time, some couples are going to say, well, now's not the time to bring it up, maybe later, or, if I do XYZ enough, maybe they'll notice it and come talk to me. So what people would call compromise or patience, I'm going to call that self-abandonment. So when
Mm.
I am self-abandoned, again, I'm not fully present. And think about
Good.
this: over a duration of time, not being present with yourself, you're going to lose connection to what it is, the needs you even have to be asking your partner.
I think that piece right there, and with the men that I've worked with, is so hard for men to really express that, and we don't. So many times we don't have the tools to even understand how do we ask for what we need.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Is it safe for us
Yeah.
to say what we need and then not feel like we're
Yeah.
a total loser because
Yeah.
we have all these needs all of a sudden?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you help men, like in your practice in a marriage relationship, maybe come out of that and become
Mhm.
more honest, more
Sure.
create more safety?
So I think the hindsight here is to remember that just because I'm agreeing with what my partner is experiencing doesn't mean I'm in agreement with what they're experiencing, because all couples are going to get into what I call data chasing, because their perspectives are different. But think about when you get into an argument, right? You're like, if you're really angry, your job in that moment, your human behavior, this natural defense mechanism, is to try to get your partner angry so then you can understand that they feel what you feel. But what if your partner doesn't get angry easily? What if they're not anxious very fast? What if they know how to process things? So if you let go of this expectation that to understand you, I have to think just like you, it takes the stress off of couples. And rather you're male or female, that's going to allow you to start working towards becoming more honest with whatever the need is. You can say it simplistically, like, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I'm just feeling this right now. right? Which is a total validation and then expression. You're validating that you're not coming against your partner. You're not already in defiance in them, but you're letting them know I'm really confused and I'm struggling to be connected. So I think it starts with, first of all, do you know how to stop and pause and drop that elevator into what you're really experiencing, right? Because feelings are going to be on the surface. Emotion
Yeah.
is what's driving that. So it's a interdependence from within oneself, right? To understand that. And then it's understanding there should be that safety to give it to your partner. And I think most people, here's the kicker. Most people forget that actually in a conversation where you're trying to figure out what you feel to break the disconnection is actually the intimacy. They overlook it
Nice.
all the time. Every time, right? They're like, "Oh, well, the other day they got mad at me," and I said, I just wish I could be more patient so I could help you to trust me sooner." Well, when I hear that, I'm like, "Do y'all realize that's intimacy?" And they're like, "No, that's a conflict." I'm like, "No, that's intimacy." So again, it just starts with self-awareness, right? Feeling that emotion, moving towards it, and then safely walking towards expressing it. It's hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, what are some of the subtle ways that people break safety in the relationship?
Nodding even though you're not listening, uh, being in
Mhm.
agreement when you know you're not, practicing patience as if it's real, right? Those are those subtle ways of, well, I don't understand why you're upset. I've been sitting in the living room with you for 45 minutes. Yeah, but how many times did you pick up your phone in that conversation? How many
Yeah.
times did you sigh and not explain to them what that sigh meant? So those subtle disconnections for sure can happen that way.
When you have the couple, sometimes you have, especially like early in recovery, that people are trying to really reconnect and do that. It almost feels like both are walking on eggshells. They're trying to slowly see, okay, what is the person feeling, and almost always having those feelers. How would you help someone? I mean, what does it reveal really about the relationship when you are walking on eggshells with each other?
That honesty is not at the forefront. We're still
Mm,
feeling parts of ourselves. We're probably afraid or overwhelmed, right? If you go into an attachment point of view, if you have an avoidant and an anxious attachment, what you're really doing is just acting out the only way you know how to connect. A rebuilding, it's how do we push these two together where it's safe for both of us. So eggshells are
yeah.
just, I think a lot of couples, it's great you bring this up because eggshells usually mean it's over. Right? Or like, I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't want to feel stressed.
Mhm.
I don't want to feel exhausted. I don't want to feel like I'm not in love. I hear that one a lot too, you know? And to me, I'm like, no, it's just an indication of the lack of connection that's within the relationship, but it's not a end all be all type of statement.
I wonder, like in your observation in this dynamic, Catherine, that you see the couples, right, and the back and forth, the disconnection. How does like dialogue, when how does dialogue, uh, how does that become a tool to bring these two together and maybe talk through some of the hard things that they're facing together, whatever that would be? How would dialogue come together as a tool?
So the easiest way to describe it is that dialoguing would be what we would call assertive communication and active listening, right? So, assertive communication would be the ability to say your wants, needs, and desires. And if you were an active listening, you're not listening for a comeback, you're listening to actually be able to repeat back what that person is saying to you. So, that's where it starts. Because the hardest part is getting people to just sit in the awkward presentation of having the conversation, is where most people run away, find something else to do.
Without
Yeah.
having to
Yeah.
just think about the response,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So assertive communication is what's going to drive that factor because it's going to allow you to sit with your authentic self. Right. And again,
Mhm.
remember what I said earlier you don't have to be in agreement with what your partner is saying, but agreeing with them is being able to say, I can see this makes you really nervous. I can see you're really struggling. Maybe you're scared. And that person can reciprocate intimacy or dialoguing by saying how that makes them feel, right? It makes me sad that you're nervous to talk to me, right? Because it's kind of like a grief concept. When you're rebuilding these things, you have to acknowledge that it was once tore apart. And to do that is going to bring that a lot closer, I would say. But It's a development of capacity. So when you first start doing it, it's awkward as crazy. It almost feels robotic. But eventually I've seen couples learn to turn it into their own point of view and how to express that back and forth.
I can see how that could be the tool to really bring the connection and start like the reattachment, even back, right, for whatever the rupture was, that you're able to grow into that area where you can sit and even hear things that are uncomfortable for you, and still dig into curiosity, even maybe to ask for more, to tell me more, even though if I'm talking to Diana and whatever she's telling me, it's making me uncomfortable and even upset. But if I can sit there and say, honey, tell me more about that, and maybe even acknowledge that I'm not in a good place right now, like I'm feeling uncomfortable and excuse me, and even angry, but I want to hear more. That's, I think that creates like safety because you're being honest. And on the flip side, I feel that for some men that I know, it's so difficult to do that because by that point they're exploding, they're angry, they're, the only emotion that they know how to express, right, is the anger, the frustration.
And then you also have the other part too, where people will say, like, I just want to keep the peace. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to push back. I'm just going to let her win. I just don't want to. So, what do you say about that?
Don't like it. Again, that's self-abandonment. How are we going to be connected if there's all these floaters of inconsistency around us, right? And I want to go back to what you said about men when they get angry, because it's not just men. Okay, I've seen females do this too, right?
Of course, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I usually tell couples at that point is when you start to feel that overwhelming coming over you and that anger, which is trying to protect you, the next thing I want you to do is take a deep breath and just observe your partner. What are you noticing in their body language? And keep this definition in your head. She's not conflicting to control. She's conflicting to confront.
Oh,
She wants to
Good.
come forward with it, right? And you have to hold that narrative. I would call that self accountability. It's understanding that I'm prone to wander into anger. It's just easy for me to do. So now I'm going to slow down and I'm going to notice her body language because couples know each other way better than any therapist ever will, even when they're in conflict with each other. Because what is the root of the conflict? It's the feeling that you're not for me. So if I stop and I pause in my anger, knowing that it wants to protect me because I'm overwhelmed, that I don't have the answers, I'm afraid, those types of things. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to notice, wow, her shoulders are really low, even if her face seems hard. I'm noticing her breathing is really shallow. And we are, from birth, we are born to look at each other's faces to determine safety. We know facial cues. So if you learn to just stop, pause, male or female, take a deep breath, notice your partner with the definition in your head that they're not coming to control me. They're coming because they want to confront the thing that's tearing us apart.
Catherine, one quick like observation of what you're saying. Do you think it would be a good way to give the hearers, the people that are listening to this podcast, this episode, is like one of the tools is as you're navigating this conversation that might be completely uncomfortable, uneasy feeling to be there, that you would sit there and purpose in yourself to look at your spouse's demeanor and breathing and body posture and just say that what you see to your spouse. I see that you're breathing shallow. I see this. Your shoulders are hanging. I mean, would that be a good tool? Like a good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think when you're in conflict or in disconnection or even in that intensity of trying to rebuild trust, we're trying to bridge that gap of confusion, right? So being able to sit there and say, this is what I'm noticing about you is validation. And
Okay,
it
that's great.
really opens the conversation, even if it stays in what feels like this conflictual vibration, right? It's still coming forward with, I see you. When you think about most conflict, people are in defense mechanisms. So we're throwing everything we got at each other because the pain is so big. There's no validation in that. So if I say, I can't, well, when you stop yelling, I'll stop yelling. Okay, well, that's if I said that to you right now, you'd be like, "I'm not yelling. You want me to yell?" Like, it's just natural behavior, right? So if say, "Hey, I'm noticing your voice is getting really loud. Can you help me understand what that means?" And maybe even take it a step further, really go vulnerable and say, I'm scared because I don't know what that means, but I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, for like maybe couples that have been in conflict and one of the spouses has been constantly shut down over and over again, how do they start even like expressing that they need that from their partner that maybe hasn't read all the books, hasn't seen the podcast, hasn't done the work yet?
fair. So one of I hate saying easy in the world of therapy because nothing's easy, but one way to grow that capacity, I should say, is you should be practicing a pretty generic check in once a week with each other. And you don't have to start with the heavy conversations. It could be frustrations at your job, frustrations with a family member, a friend, just in general. Because when you're side by side, you're understanding, okay, this person wants me to be present with them, right? So if all of a sudden my husband starts saying, "Oh man, I was in the middle of this project and this guy came in and he completely blew it up," I'm going to start noticing, oh, maybe that's why he was stressed this week. Maybe it wasn't me. And that is easier to move forward in conversation versus, why are you always mad? Why does this make you mad? But it's like, is that why you were upset this week? Because I noticed you were really tense with me and the kids. And it brings down that pressure to have a direct focal point of the heavier things while building that capacity of moving towards each other.
Yeah. One of those sounds very confrontational. Like, I need to know this. Tell me why. And the other one is more caring,
Yeah,
right? And
fighting.
more inviting. I
Mhm.
love that word, more inviting. And I think inviting is always better. And just because you're inviting doesn't mean that you cannot confront things that are challenging
Absolutely.
and things that you care about.
Yeah.
You're just doing it with tact. You're doing it with a different tone, but you can ask anything that you need from your spouse.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes
R-
when we have really conflictual conversations between couples, I'll tell them, if at all possible, go for a walk at the end of the day. Take out time to communicate there. And here's why: there's a little bit of neuroscience in this. When we are walking side by side, there's less pressure to have an answer. The other thing that's going on is you're reflecting your surroundings, right? So most of the time, you're almost looking left to right, left to right. That's a bilateral movement in the brain that can signal, I understand my surroundings. So it's a faster way to not immediately think threat like you would be face to face in the living room,
right.
and more side by side. So going back to what you said earlier, the inviting. It's, I want to do this with you. And there's not so much pressure. But most couples are going to do this in the middle of the kitchen, in the middle of the hallway, direct, right? And it's like, yeah, somebody has to be the mature one and go first and say, I think we need a timeout right here. Can we move this over here? Can we go for a walk? Those types of
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So that sounds like healthy vulnerability at the moment. That would be healthy to do that and maybe to step away and to even like we've talked about this in the past, like maybe even setting like, hey, 30 minutes from now, let's revisit this, right? Let's have another
Yeah.
conversation. But not just leaving it like, okay, it
Open
never,
ended.
That is the
yeah,
worst thing. Look, you can always take a break, right?
yeah.
So research shows us we don't want to go more than 15 minutes, because more than
Oh,
15
that's
minutes,
good.
you're likely just coming up with your comebacks in another room. But I understand, as a parent and as a business owner, sometimes these things aren't going to happen. But if there is a promise of returning and there's a consistency of you returning to those promises, that becomes a stronger vulnerability exercise with couples too, because you're still practicing inviting one another into the pain, but you're also developing your emotional awareness to yourself and your own emotional accountability.
How would you help someone that is maybe walking through trying to have these conversations, but the moment that they get into conflict, they start shutting down? Like their brain literally just stops working
Sure.
and they don't know how to move forward. Like, what are maybe some things that they can tell each other, or, like what would it look like in just like real Sunday night language?
So I think the best way to move towards that is, when your brain loses words, notice what you're feeling, right? Because most people are going to approach with vulnerability in a conversation and then it goes sideways. So all of a sudden, the body is wanting to react to find safety again. So I always teach my couples,
The moment you feel like you're going offline, signal that white flag to your partner. Because here's where it gets dangerous. Your partner is staring at you. You're looking through your eyes. You can't see your face, but they can sure see your face. So when you go silent, when you go quiet, their narrative starts registering way too fast because the conflict is unresolved. So things like, this isn't important to you, you don't care, see, it's always going to be like what it is. But if the vulnerability and the truthfulness is there, that person could say, I'm starting to feel a lot of anxiety right now, or it may be a somatic thing. So I feel like my throat wants to close up. Right? And you have to understand when couples get to that point, they do have a certain degree of intimacy that they naturally will cling to that. And what I mean is, one partner might say in a therapy session, I'm getting really nervous, my throat's closing. And the other one goes, I know you get anxious when pressure's on you. Right. And so all of a
Wow.
sudden there's the intimacy because intimacy is
Yeah.
intimacy. So they're seeing it.
Mhm.
So I would say if you don't have the words, notice the sensations in your body and start there.
What you just said reminds me of a saying that I heard a few months back, maybe years back, but it's connected to our innate need for someone to know us like deeply. And the saying is, we are born looking for someone looking for us.
Yeah.
So in a space where everything can be so convoluted in our minds, right? Trying to navigate emotions
Yeah.
and difficult conversations and being honest, creating safety. When someone is able to do that, I think is a breath of fresh air to our heart, that someone cares enough to look into us and say, man, like when your throat closes, it means that you're nervous. Like I'm here, like I'm recognizing that, as opposed to just completely neglect that, don't even acknowledge that, and kind of just push forward. Is a complete different scenario and complete different
Yeah.
results that can
Absolutely.
happen from that.
Absolutely. I think couples really get tripped up with the idea that if we are in conflict, something must always be wrong. And I'm always like, well, I don't think that's true because if I have a couple come into my office and they're like, we never fight, I'm like, you do know that's a bad sign. That's not a
Yeah.
healthy thing. That means we're not talking to each other about struggles or anything like that. And that's what I always try to tell couples. You have to understand your conflict, even if it's at the loudest decimal of sound that it can get to, right? What that's doing is it's signaling the deprivation or the pain in the relationship. What do we equate pain to? The separation and the loss. So, what you said, that desire to be known, that desire to know somebody's coming for me, not all conflict means it's all doom and gloom. What it means is there's actually a really strong attraction to one another, but we lack the tools to approach one another. So we keep hitting a wall instead of being able to embrace one another.
I know for the couple maybe that's listening to this, Catherine, and they're like, we're at that place. Like we feel so disconnected. Like, what are some steps that maybe they can take to start that repair in their relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, again, this is my bias, I'll be honest with you, right? I think it's understanding yourself individually. So become aware of the way you attach, your attachment style, become the way you approach conflict. Get to know yourself because that's where
Mm.
that truth can come in later when you are starting to practice vulnerability because not all couples are going to do this together. Most of the time, it's going to be one leading faster than the other. To which I usually tell couples that's actually normal for everybody. But when the relationship's wonky, it doesn't feel fair. But when you feel fulfilled, if you're the one who always brings the emotion to the table, you will. So learn how you process. What is your perspective? Where is it birthed from? And how do you handle it? And do a little bit of deep diving within yourself because two things can happen in that. Of course, you're going to be able to lean into vulnerability. You're going to be able to express these things. But the other thing is it's going to allow you to understand what secure functioning is. So it's going to help you answer, is this a relationship I am to stay in? Because there's better understanding than going, well, maybe I'll just try what Google says. Maybe I'll just Google this. What did Chat GPT tell me to do? Take it,
All right.
try, and it's like, I'm
Yeah.
all for AI. I'm not against it, but sometimes agreeing with everything we say is not the best manner. So I think it's a deep dive into yourself. And again, find a therapist that focuses on understanding you individually. If you find one that's constantly trying to do one theory and one method, you could be pushing people together way faster than their brain even knows how to comprehend.
I remember in the work that I've done, I've always been a very independent person, and I am.
Mhm.
But part of the work that I have done has helped me recognize the areas of my life where I was like too independent
Mm,
in a healthy way to allow people to come into my space, into my life. And in knowing that and becoming aware with that, uh, I'm able now to feel okay in allowing Diana to come
yeah,
into those thoughts, into those areas where before it was like no way. It's like is this is not even a question if I can share this
yeah,
or if I can allow her to help me in any way.
right,
But now that is I know that that's unhealthy because like I need
mm,
her. I need her to know what is happening
sure,
inside of me.
right,
And she's been so instrumental and the Lord has allowed it
yeah,
for us to walk together and for her to teach me like vulnerability
yeah,
and how to open my heart and then that it's okay
yeah,
to open my heart with
yeah,
her. And that does not make me like less of a
right,
man, less masculine.
right,
As a matter of fact, it makes me
yeah,
a wholehearted man, a man that I can hold my masculinity, but at the same time, allow people that I care in my life, the most important person,
yeah,
to come into that space that is so sacred, and I'm able to share that with her.
yeah.
And 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 I feel that sometimes when men hear something like this, they say, "Oh, so I need to be emotional with everyone." Man,
Oh, that
shut up, man. It's like no,
right,
it's
right.
it's it's you're using this as we use anger. Everything's anger.
Yeah,
Anger is good when it's pinpointed at the right situation at the right moment.
right,
Yes, injustice, right.
yeah,
The same thing with this. I think that this vulnerability applies to the most important person in your life, the most important people in your life.
yeah,
I love
So,
what you said earlier that you talked a little bit about attachments because that's what we bring into the relationships.
right,
We don't realize it that we are bringing in this part of our history, this part of our makeup, right? And
yeah.
then we're here trying to love someone that is like, no,
yeah.
don't get near
Right,
me.
right. Because the most common dynamic we see attached to each other is an avoidant and an anxious, right?
Hello.
Yeah,
Amen. Amen,
oh,
sister.
that's the joke. I'm 20 years married to my husband, and I call myself the anxious weirdo, and he's avoidant, right?
Same.
What I've come to realize with the way that God created covenants is those insecurities, right? Because they're not opposites. They're insecurities in the relationship. They actually heal within one another. I will always tell my guys, I will
Yes,
get
say it, Catherine. Say it
with
again.
anybody else in the world, but you have to learn how to do it with her because it's actually where your healing exists. This idea that men, and this breaks my heart, that men have to be these macho guys that stretch the forge alone and they do all of this stuff and they go forward and don't need anybody. Wrong. Wrong,
Wrong.
right? And again, I want to hang on what you said about knowing you were a person who was closed off, who thought independence was the way you had to be. I always teach couples you've got your primary attachment that comes from your parents, your secondary attachment you're experiencing right now with your partner, but guess what? Then there's you. You've got two filtration systems that have to get here. So if you
Yeah.
know that because of the way you were raised or what you experienced, you had to become a person who kept the peace by being quiet so everyone else could walk in peace. And what happened was you lost the ability to develop emotional regulation. We look at that in the world of therapy as developmental immaturity. It's going to catch up with you, right? So when you learn that about yourself, then you filter it through your partner, who's probably the opposite of that, right? So they're really good at going, let's lean into this, let's feel it, right?
Yes.
Actually, as you're compressing and decompressing this experience together, that's what is going to build it into a secure attachment. So I think it's really important, again, that people understand themselves as individuals because it's natural when you're in conflict that's been unresolved to think that you're doing it against one another. That's not true. I can't punish my husband because he's an avoidant who takes, as he says, 3 to 5 business days to come up with emotions. And I find 52 emotions in 10 seconds. I'm not going to punish
Right.
him and he's not going to punish me. But think about a couple who doesn't know that's how they process. So here I come, I'm in the kitchen going blah, 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 blah to my husband. he's overwhelmed and it's things that are really important to me. And I'm watching the stonewall show up. My brain
Yeah.
immediately is going to lean into that and say, this isn't safe. And that is always not true. It's not true. So that's when you have to lean into, man, I'm really feeling like this isn't important to you. Why do you think that? Because your face is like floating off into fantasy land, dude. Where are you going? Right. And I think over time, couples learn to talk to each other in a much more comedic kind of way. In the beginning, it's very
Yeah.
robotic, but all good in the end.
And I think creating that safety, right, where you can actually come as you are, but then you really can't stay as you are because there's things that are completely unhealthy
Right.
that really need to change. And this is the part why we believe so much in therapy and we believe in doing the work
Yeah.
because then you can show up in a healthy manner
Absolutely.
to your husband, to the world, to your family. So super, super
Yep.
important. I love it.
And you can continue to build a red hot marriage. I
That's
mean,
right.
Absolutely.
that's what it's all about. Is that journey, right? The journey, ever evolving journey of marriage. And we always talk about it. Like if you're cruising in your marriage, that means that there's only one way to cruise,
Yeah.
and that's downhill. Like your marriage
No.
is degrading by the second as you cruise through life.
Yeah.
But having challenging dialogue,
Mhm.
like what you're talking about, Catherine,
Mhm.
that word right there, that phrase is going to stick with me.
Yep.
And if you see our podcast, we're going to talk about that a lot because
Love it.
that's so powerful
Good.
to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dialogue
Sure.
and be able to ask the questions, to sit down in the uneasy parts of conversation.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be powerful, and it's going to be a game changer for marriages
Yep.
that apply it.
Absolutely.
What are some of the phrases that come like from top of mind
Yeah.
that couples can use to encourage dialogue?
I think the biggest one I say all the time is I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. It's just how I'm feeling. Right.
Good.
Feelings are just, and I always tell people when our couples, when I'm teaching them this, the greatest an example of a feeling is hunger. You feel it, you eat, it goes away. It doesn't have ground, right?
Mm,
Starvation would be an emotional experience because there's a duration of time without food. That's a different thing. So I always tell people start with the reality that the truth is you don't know what you feel. And if you don't present it with a vulnerable statement, which validates before you express, you're going to jump the gun, right? So saying something as simplistic as I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but this is what I'm feeling. The second thing I commonly tell people, and if you notice, my hands already went up as I said this is a psychological sign of white flag, right? So it's like I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying I'm really nervous about this. This is what I'm feeling right now. I'm just experiencing this. We will,
That's so interesting because even your body will do that
right?
automatically, like, hey, hold on, stop.
Yeah.
and I like that. I like the spoken
Mhm.
the spoken format or the spoken frame of that, but also your physical frame combined.
Absolutely.
What a powerful a picture whenever you're encouraging dialogue and are in front of creating that space,
Mhm.
lifting your hands and saying,
Yeah.
you know, it might not be, it
Yeah.
might be right or wrong.
Yeah. I think it's the most common phrase that I use in couples therapy because most of the time I'm going to hear a husband say to me, it's the tone, Katie. I can't do the tone. And I'm like, that's true. But you know what's sad about that? Women can be in a conversation with 5 other girls and we're, oh my gosh, you did what? And we don't flinch, right? We follow the pace of emotion. You put 5 men together and one guy goes, what was that? Y'all all go on alert. It is your wiring, right? So immediately you're going to do that. So that is why I teach the psychological side of put your hands gently up and say, hey, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just trying to figure out what I am feeling. So this is just me talking out loud, babe. I'm walking it through with you, right? And if you've got that body posture, your voice is naturally going to match your posture. If I'm big, I'm going to be loud. But if I am, bowing down, if I'm bending myself down in humility, I'm going to be softer, whether a male or female.
It's a great way to encourage dialogue. No threat. Like, I don't know. I'm uncertain of this, but I'm sharing it with you. I love that.
Hmm. No, it's so good. And I think that that's something where couples get stuck. That I love what you mentioned about that, the tone, because I know that for men, the part of respect is so critical.
Yeah.
So when they feel that,
Yeah.
immediately
Right.
you see the reaction.
Yeah. And it could be one of those things where when we feel disrespected, it's kind of we react to it. We don't respond to it like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
like it's like an obvious reaction towards it.
Mhm.
We shut down, we get angry, we respond, we defensive, all these different things.
Yeah.
And it's that's the way it is, and we need to work through it. Like we need to be aware and learn how to navigate out of
Yeah.
it.
Well, think about earlier when I said go back to noticing your partner's body language. So even when your brain wants to jump offline, if you see her still signaling to you, hey, hang on just a second, you can register that.
When there's honesty in the relationship and you can just come as you are and really share what's going on in your heart, it no longer may feel like a risk to expose your heart. And that can bring, of course, closeness. But what is something that couples can do to begin that process today?
Mhm.
That maybe they've had this thing, something, it's the thing beneath the thing that they haven't talked about.
Yeah.
How could maybe you coach somebody through helping them, okay, bring it to the surface and just,
Yeah.
sharing that with their spouse?
I want you to remember to always validate and express. It's a catchphrase I'm notorious for because I think in that moment, this takes a big amount of bravery because the greatest risk we'll ever experience in our life is relational. It's not financial. You can always make money. You can always do those things, right? It's risk in marriages and relationships because it's the idea of I don't know if you're going to choose me. So you have to kind of wrestle with I don't want to be here anymore. So I'm going to go first and I'm going to go to my partner and I'm going to validate. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like we've been off for a while. And I feel like I've almost forgot how to miss you because I'm afraid I can't even tell you this.
Wow.
Lean into what you're experiencing. Validate that you're seeing what's going on. If you do it the other way, which is, I noticed you don't ever want to talk anymore. You just come home and you're turning on the TV, right? I get it. I tell couples all the time, I know it hurts inside, but go back to human behavior. If you immediately approach with that, you put them on alert. But if you come
Yeah.
into the situation and don't be afraid of doing it, because the truth is, it's always going to teach you again secure functioning. So as you walk in and you're truthful, you can go back to yourself, even if your partner refuses to ever become that person for you. You can go, I always spoke in truth. I always spoke in truth. I was always honest, right? So don't fear it. Start with validating and then expressing it. Because sometimes I think partners are just, especially if you're the anxious one who's understanding all the emotions, right? And the avoidant is so overwhelmed, they're probably looking for you to bring it up. But they're going to be seeking in safety a way that you bring it up in a way that can be reciprocated or dialogue.
Okay, and so for all my anxious partners,
Just-
what can you tell them to do whenever they're approaching
Sure.
their spouse?
So what I would say is you have to normalize that tornado you feel in your chest.
God,
God,
that's so
God
good.
created you through your own development, whether it was great, bad, whatever we want to name it, the ability to have a strong discernment. And your discernment can get out of hand sometimes. You can try to discern 5 at one time. Let's start with the biggest one. So normalizing that tornado, that cyclone, that heavy feeling on your chest, an elephant sitting on your chest, if I can, right? That's normal. That doesn't mean you're already in threat. It doesn't mean you're already unsafe. It's telling you there's a lot out of alignment here. So deep breathe, right? Take a deep breath. I
Yeah.
usually tell my anxious partners, put your hand on your chest and press firmly. Ground yourself, right? And know that you're doing this out of honesty to seek truth and connection. So that way, even if your partner doesn't reciprocate it, and God forbid it goes that way, but sometimes it does, you can still walk away knowing that I'm solid, I'm truthful, I'm whole.
No, well, Katie, I know that it has been amazing just talking to you, and we could be here like all day long asking you questions
Yeah.
because it's just we love picking your brain.
Yeah.
But one thing about Catherine, I know I called you Katie because
I know.
we're besties here,
Yes.
but Catherine is she is phenomenal. We came to know her through a mutual friend, and we just hear amazing things. But she is also one of those therapists that she is a
A
unicorn
unicorn,
in her
yes.
field because she is not only a therapist, she's also a CSAT.
A CSAT.
So we are
Female.
a female CSAT that
sure.
helps,
Yeah.
couples in this area. So we are so excited to have this conversation with her because I know you heard her. Go follow her. So definitely reach out to her. We're going to put her information also there. So anyone that is maybe seeking someone in the Houston area, or I know online, you can also see her online, can reach out to her because she is phenomenal. And these conversations are just a little snippet of what she does online and what, the care that she brings to all her clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for any couple that is hearing this, today or at any time, this is one of those podcasts that you need to listen over and over, because every time that you hear it, you're going to learn more about what it is to dialogue, what it is to connect, to attach,
Yeah.
to be a couple, and learn how to navigate those conversations that many times we shy away from. But those are the conversations that we need to lean into with the right tools to create greater connection and keep on building this beautiful red hot marriage. And Katherine, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been absolutely a pleasure and a joy. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience. I know that this is going to help a lot of couples that listen to this, and it is going to help Diana and I too.
Yeah, I know. We're going to go back and listen to it again. I think we need to. But I know you have a really awesome resource online for help. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually just finally pushed forward with a total coaching platform that is all accessible online, and it is actually called Secure Without Compromise. So everything we've talked about today, we did it in a module form where it's audio, so you don't have to sit. You can listen to it in the car, grocery shopping, got your earbuds in and doing those types of things. But it does everything we've talked about, helping you identify yourself as an individual, go to your attachment style, what that's going to look like in your couple dynamic, and then how to walk that out. That was the biggest.
Where can they get it?
So you can find it through our website. We have a couple of links there, and our social media over the next couple of weeks is going to have some links to it as well.
Awesome. Can you share your website? What is
So
it?
it is www.resilient-minded.com.
And we'll include it in the notes for this podcast as well.
For sure.
Well, Katherine, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do. Bless you for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
And we are so excited to share this with the world.
Yes, amazing. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you for spending this time with us. Man, this episode with Katie was incredible, and we both agree it was some of the things that she dropped was straight out like incredible. So we want to invite you to go ahead and like and subscribe. Go to YouTube, go to Instagram, to our TikTok, to all our social media platforms, everywhere. Join us, continue to build a red hot marriage.